The conference room hummed with anticipation, 200 employees packed into rows of chairs facing the stage. My boss, Greg, stood at the podium, PowerPoint glowing behind him, announcing the quarterly promotions. I sat in the middle row, heart pounding, because this was it. 9 years with the company. Consistently top performer. 3 major projects saved from disaster. $2.3 million in cost savings I'd personally generated. This had to be my year. Greg clicked to the next slide. Our new management team. 5 names appeared. Jake Morrison, Marcus Chen, Vanessa Price. 2 others I barely knew. My name wasn't there. The room blurred. I heard applause like it was underwater. After the meeting, I caught Greg in the hallway. "Can we talk?" He sighed, glancing at his watch. "Ethan, look. You're great at what you do, but you're not leadership material. You don't have the profile we're looking for. Some people are workers, some are leaders. You're a worker." He walked away, leaving me standing there with 9 years of loyalty crumbling in my chest. 3 months later, Greg was fired, and the woman who replaced him stood on that same stage, looked directly at me, and said words that changed everything. "Ethan Rowe, please stand up. You're about to become the youngest VP in this company's history." My name is Ethan Rowe. I'm 37 years old, and I work in tech operations for a software company in Brisbane. When I started 9 years ago, I was a junior analyst fresh out of university, excited to prove myself. I worked weekends. I stayed late. I learned every system, every process, every client account. I became the person people called when projects went wrong, when deadlines were impossible, when nobody else knew what to do. And for 9 years, I watched less qualified people get promoted over me while I was told to keep up the good work and be patient. But patience has limits, and mine ran out the day Greg told me I wasn't leadership material. Because what he meant, what he couldn't say out loud, was that I didn't fit his idea of what a leader looked like. I was quiet, methodical, focused on results instead of politics. I didn't play golf with executives. I didn't schmooze at corporate events. I just did exceptional work and assumed that would be enough. I was wrong. Until I wasn't. If you've ever been overlooked at work, if you've ever watched someone less qualified get the promotion you deserved, this story is for you. And before we go further, I want to ask something. If you're finding value in this story, would you hit that subscribe button? It really helps, and I promise you, what's coming next is going to validate every time you've been passed over. Thank you. Now let me tell you how this really started. I joined the company in 2015, 28 years old, hungry to make an impact. The company developed enterprise software for logistics companies, helping them optimize supply chains. My role was analyzing data, identifying inefficiencies, proposing solutions. Within 6 months, I'd streamlined a process that saved our biggest client $200,000 annually. My manager at the time praised me, said I had a bright future. Then Greg was hired as VP of Operations, and everything changed. Greg was the epitome of corporate politics. Tall, charismatic, MBA from an expensive university, always the loudest voice in the room. He valued confidence over competence, style over substance. Within his first year, he restructured the department, promoting people who aligned with his vision, which meant people who laughed at his jokes, attended his team dinners, and never questioned his decisions. I didn't fit that mold. I was the quiet guy in the corner who delivered results but didn't make a show of it. The first promotion I was passed over for went to Jake Morrison. Jake was likable, I'll give him that. But his project success rate was abysmal. Out of 5 major projects he'd led, 3 had failed spectacularly, costing the company time and client trust. But Jake played golf with the CFO. He knew which executives to compliment, which meetings to be visible in. When Greg announced Jake's promotion to senior analyst, he said, "Jake embodies the kind of leadership presence we need." Leadership presence. Code for, looks the part, sounds confident, actual results irrelevant. I absorbed the disappointment and worked harder. I took on the projects Jake had bungled and fixed them. I built relationships with clients, not through schmoozing, but through solving their problems. One client, a national freight company, was ready to cancel their contract after a system failure. I worked 70-hour weeks for a month, rebuilt their integration from scratch, and saved the account. Worth $4 million annually. Greg sent a company-wide email praising the team's effort. My name wasn't mentioned. 2 years later, Marcus Chen got promoted to team lead. Marcus was smart enough, but he had a gift for delegation that bordered on laziness. He'd assign me the hard work, then present the results to Greg as his own achievements. I knew it was happening. Everyone knew it was happening. But Greg didn't care because Marcus was visible, vocal, networked. When I finally worked up the courage to mention it to Greg, he said, "Ethan, leadership is about coordinating teams, not doing everything yourself. Marcus understands that." So doing the work disqualified me. Noted. The third promotion that skipped over me went to Vanessa Price, daughter of one of our major clients. Vanessa had been with the company for 18 months. She was competent, but untested. Her promotion to project manager was announced the day after her father signed a 3-year contract extension. The connection was obvious, but when I asked Greg about it, he looked at me like I was being naive. "Business is about relationships, Ethan. You need to understand that." I understood perfectly. Merit didn't matter. Only connections did. Have you ever felt invisible at work despite being indispensable? Drop the word invisible in the comments if you have. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Because what happens next is going to make all of this worth it. By year 7, I was documenting everything. Every project I completed, every metric I improved, every client who specifically requested to work with me. I created a detailed portfolio, not because I thought Greg would suddenly care, but because I knew eventually someone would. I also started looking at other opportunities. Recruiters reached out regularly. I had interviews. One company in Sydney offered me a senior position with a 30% pay increase. I almost took it. But something made me stay. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe belief that good work should be recognized where it's done. Maybe just exhaustion at the thought of starting over. Then came the promotion announcement that broke me. The one where Greg said I wasn't leadership material. After that meeting, after that hallway conversation, I went back to my desk and sat in silence for an hour. My colleague Sarah, who'd been with the company for 5 years, came over. "I can't believe he didn't promote you. Everyone knows you run this place." "Apparently not everyone," I said. She shook her head. "Greg's an idiot. One day someone's going to see what you actually do here, and he's going to regret this." I didn't believe her, but I should have, because 2 months later, everything fell apart. Jake, who'd been promoted to operations manager, was leading our biggest project of the year. A complete system overhaul for a logistics giant, worth $4.5 million. Jake approached it the way he approached everything, delegating the hard work, focusing on presentations, hoping things would somehow work out. They didn't. 3 months into the project, the client called an emergency meeting. The system wasn't working. Deadlines were missed. Data was corrupted. They were threatening to cancel the contract and sue for breach. The CEO pulled Greg into a meeting. Greg pulled in Jake. Jake, sweating and stammering, admitted he was in over his head. The CEO asked who could fix it. Everyone in the room looked at me. I was pulled into a conference room with the CEO, the CTO, and our legal team. "Can you save this?" the CEO asked. I looked at the project documentation, the timeline, the mess Jake had created. "Yes," I said. "But I'll need full authority and 3 weeks." They gave me both. For 3 weeks, I worked 18-hour days. I rebuilt the integration architecture. I recovered corrupted data. I personally met with the client's technical team daily, walking them through every fix, every test, every milestone. It was exhausting, but it worked. On the final day, the system went live. Perfect deployment, 0 errors. The client was ecstatic. They not only kept the contract, they expanded it. That project became a case study in corporate recovery. The CEO called me into his office. "You just saved this company $4.5 million in our reputation. Why isn't someone like you in management?" I didn't know how to answer that. He nodded slowly. "I'm going to look into this." 2 weeks later, the board launched an audit of the operations department. They reviewed project success rates, employee feedback, promotion decisions. What they found was damning. Greg had systematically promoted based on favoritism rather than merit. Employee satisfaction under his leadership had dropped 40%. Project success rates had declined. Talented people were leaving. And the one person holding everything together was me, unrecognized and underpaid. Greg was fired on a Tuesday morning. Security escorted him out. The announcement was brief. Leadership changes effective immediately. The company brought in Sarah Mitchell as the new CEO, a woman with a reputation for ruthless meritocracy and zero tolerance for politics. She'd turned around 3 failing companies in her career. Now she was here to fix ours. This is where everything changes. Stay with me, because what Sarah does next is going to blow your mind. And please, if this story is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button. The payoff is coming. Sarah's first 6 weeks were terrifying for anyone who'd been coasting. She audited everything. She reviewed every project from the past 3 years. She read performance reviews, client feedback, financial data, and she interviewed every employee privately, one by one. When my turn came, I walked into her office expecting a standard corporate conversation. Instead, she had my entire portfolio printed out on her desk. Every project I'd documented, every metric, every client testimonial. "Sit down, Ethan," she said. Not unkindly, but direct. I sat. She tapped the papers. "I've been here for 5 weeks. In that time, I've discovered that this company has been running on the competence of about 12 people while 50 others coast on politics. You're one of the 12. Actually, you're the backbone of the 12. I didn't know what to say. She continued. "Tell me something. Why are you still here? With your track record, you could work anywhere. Why stay at a company that's consistently failed to recognize you?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Because I believe in the work," I finally said. "Not the politics, the actual work, the problems we solve, the clients we help. I didn't want to leave because one bad manager couldn't see value. I wanted to stay because the work matters." She smiled, not a corporate smile, but a real one. "That's exactly what I needed to hear. Because I'm about to offer you something, and I need to know you're doing it for the right reasons." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an offer letter. Vice President of Operations, reporting directly to her. Salary increase of 70%. Stock options. Full authority to restructure the department. I stared at it, not quite believing what I was seeing. "You're jumping me over 3 levels, I said. "I'm putting the right person in the right role," she corrected. "Greg created a culture where politics mattered more than performance. I'm creating a culture where results matter, and you've been getting results for 9 years without recognition. That ends now." I signed the letter that afternoon. Sarah scheduled a company-wide town hall for the following week. When the day arrived, the entire company packed into the auditorium, buzzing with speculation about the new leadership's plans. Sarah took the stage, and the room fell silent. "I've spent 6 weeks evaluating this company," she began. "What I found was systemic dysfunction. Promotions based on relationships rather than results. Talented people overlooked while mediocrity was rewarded. That changes today." She pulled up a slide showing project success rates over the past 5 years. The decline was stark. "This is what happens when you prioritize the wrong things," When you promote people who talk well instead of people who do well. She clicked to the next slide. My project portfolio. Every success. Every metric. Every saved account. This is what happens when you actually value competence. She looked directly at me. Ethan Rowe, please stand up. My heart stopped. Every head in the room turned toward me. I stood slowly, feeling 200 pairs of eyes. Ethan has been with this company for 9 years, Sarah continued. In that time, he's personally saved or secured over $10 million in revenue. He's mentored 17 employees. He's had a 100% project success rate, and he's been systematically passed over for promotion by leadership that couldn't see talent if it was documented in front of them. She paused. Effective immediately, Ethan is our new VP of Operations. He'll be restructuring this department based on merit, not politics. If you've been doing good work, you'll be recognized. If you've been coasting on relationships, your time is up. The room erupted, some in applause, some in shock. Jake, sitting 3 rows behind me, looked like he'd been struck. Marcus stared at his shoes. I saw former colleagues smiling, nodding, some with tears in their eyes because they'd been overlooked too. When Sarah finished her speech, she walked over and shook my hand. "Don't let me down," she said. "I won't," I promised. The next 6 months were transformative. I restructured the operations department completely. I implemented transparent performance metrics. I promoted 3 people who'd been doing exceptional work in silence, just like I had been. And I had difficult conversations with people who'd been underperforming. Jake was let go after his 3rd consecutive project failure. Marcus was moved to a role where he couldn't claim others' work. Vanessa, interestingly, thrived once she wasn't being promoted beyond her capabilities. She became a solid project manager when expectations were realistic. Client satisfaction increased 42%. Employee retention went up. Project success rates returned to industry-leading levels. The company recovered the client we'd almost lost and gained 3 new enterprise accounts. In the annual review, Sarah publicly credited the turnaround to cultural change. We stopped rewarding who you know and started rewarding what you do. Turns out, that works. I heard through the grapevine that Greg struggled to find another executive position. His reputation had taken a hit when word spread about why he'd been fired. Part of me felt bad for him. A smaller part remembered 9 years of being invisible and felt nothing at all. The truth is, he taught me something valuable. He taught me that staying true to your principles, even when they're not immediately rewarded, builds a foundation that can't be shaken. When Sarah came in and looked at the data, there was no debate about my value. It was documented, proven, undeniable. 1 year into my role as VP, I gave a speech at our company's annual conference. I talked about leadership, real leadership. Leadership isn't about who speaks the loudest or plays politics the best, I said. It's about who shows up when things are hard, who solves problems nobody else wants to touch, who lifts others up instead of taking credit for their work. That's leadership. And if your organization doesn't recognize that, either change the organization or find one that will, because you deserve to be seen. The standing ovation that followed wasn't for me. It was for everyone who'd ever been overlooked, who'd ever done great work in silence, who'd ever wondered if integrity was worth it when shortcuts seemed to work for others. It was a collective exhale from people who'd been holding their breath, waiting to be recognized. And in that moment, I realized something. Greg was wrong. I was leadership material. I always had been. I just needed a leader who understood what leadership actually meant. If you're working hard right now and feeling invisible, if you're watching less qualified people get promoted while you carry the weight, hear this. Document everything. Keep records of your wins. Build relationships with clients and colleagues who see your value. Because eventually, someone will look at the data. Someone will ask why the operation runs smoothly. Someone will notice that when you're not there, things fall apart. And when that someone arrives, You want to have proof ready. Don't compromise your integrity for approval. Don't play politics if it costs you your self-respect. Because the shortcuts that work for mediocre people eventually catch up with them. But the foundation you build with real work, with genuine competence, with integrity, that's permanent. That's what survives leadership changes and corporate restructuring. That's what makes you indispensable. What do you think? Have you ever been passed over for someone less qualified? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from people who've walked this path. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own experience, or gave you hope to keep going, please hit that subscribe button. More stories like this, about people who stayed true to themselves and eventually got their recognition, are coming. Thank you for being here. And remember, leadership isn't about the title. It's about the work. Keep doing the work. The right people will notice.